Welcome to the Bliss Builders podcast, a podcast about mental health
and personal growth
with Kristina von der Heid
and Sandra Diebel.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Bliss Builders with Kristina.
Hello.
And myself, Sandra. And today we would like to talk about a topic that also came up with another episode we did before. That was depression and low moods. And the topic we would like to talk about and dig into a little bit deeper would be loneliness. As probably most of us or a lot of us had to face this at one or another point in our lives. So maybe that would be the first question I would have for you, Kristina. Can you remember a situation in your life where you felt lonely?
Sure. Especially when I was a child. Certainly during the time that I had depression. I mean, I was surrounded by my family, so I was never really truly alone. But I did not feel understood or seen or heard and connected to them too much, which is probably why I first experienced loneliness. And then later in life, I remember times where I also was with people, but due to the lack of connection, the lack of shared interests, the lack of mutual understanding, that's pretty much when I felt the loneliest. When I'm alone, which is kind of funny, when I'm alone, like truly by myself, I haven't felt lonely in years. I think I have felt lonely when I was alone when I was a child.
Yeah.
Because I was also at that time thinking about the fact that at the time I did not have friends, which was not completely true. I had friends, I just didn't see them.
Maybe the connection was not that
Yes.
deep as with some other friendships you have now.
Yes, I think it's also was literally just a misperception.
Yeah.
And probably also the fact that I felt lonely due to not having them share in the same experiences. Which also reminds me of the fact that when I was first traveling alone, I had a moment where I also felt lonely, as I wanted to share a beautiful experience with someone and there was no one around. And that made me, that evoked a feeling of loneliness in me.
Yeah. When you are talking about experiences in the childhood, you would have liked to share with what kind of experience were this?
When I was drawing something or when I was listening to a cassette.
This time.
Yeah. I think it was like I'm not sure how she's called in English, but it's like Pippi Longstocking. Pippi Longstockings. I think that could be the translation.
That sounds way more fun in English than in German, actually.
So yeah, and I was so excited about it, and I wanted to share with someone, and then there was no one, and then I felt lonely.
Oh, Pippi Langstrumpf.
Yeah.
Cute. She was a very brave girl.
Yeah, I was a big fan at that time. I remember one time where I would be like blasting the cassette recorder on full volume throughout the house because I wanted to share it with everyone how cool it is.
Aww.
And I thought it was the absolute coolest. And then I got some punishment because my mom was like, you can't bother all the neighbors with what you like,
with
because
Pippi.
they don't share what you like and they don't understand your excitement. So for them it's just noise, which is true, because like if I think about it now, like whenever people listen to music very loud, they enjoy it, but I don't,
I know.
and I don't resonate, and then I'm disturbed by the noise. So I get it.
But you bring up something interesting that was not in my preparation, but actually something I was thinking of during my travels, the part of sharing, for example, where you know the saying sharing is caring?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always thought it is about physical things, you know, or I understood it about physical things.
I'm sure you did. she's sharing a lot of physical things. Food, flowers. She's definitely like yes.
Yeah. So this is kind of obvious for me, and yeah, okay, makes sense, of course. But while I was traveling and I was getting into deep talks with complete strangers at the beginning, you know, and they kind of opened up to me and shared whole life stories with me. I understood it suddenly completely different, or at least as an add-on, as an extension, is if you share your story, your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts with someone, this is actually big a big sign of trust, connection, and yeah, also caring, that you care about the other person somehow, and also that you listen to that. And so with this interaction, there is actually depth. It's a word. It's hard to pronounce. Depth.
Yes.
Yeah. So this creates a lot of depth for a relationship. Doesn't matter if it's a romantic one or a friendship one, actually. And I was like, whoa, that was kind of a aha moment for me when I figured that out. Somehow I don't know what the original meaning would be, but yeah, I think also sharing your thoughts with people, that's a big act, I would say.
When did you feel lonely? Or like when was the time, like when or what are the times?
How much time do you have? How much time do you have? I would say it started, or especially in my teenage years, until 20s. As a child, it was fine. I was more or less good with the with my friends or with the people in my school, in primary school. I had two neighbor girls I was playing with. That was all fine. When I came into junior high, because there was an age gap of 2 and 4 years with my neighbor girls, you know, then you come into your teenage years and you don't want to play with the small children anymore, what's understandable. So they were too cool for that. It's okay. But yeah, so I haven't had anyone around because there was not really someone else around, and I don't have any siblings. So yeah, there was not really someone else. And I changed school from primary school to junior high or all of high school. And so I was detached from my group from the primary school because I was not part of them anymore. And then within the new school, actually in my class, they were all coming from two other schools. So half of the class was from one school, half of the class was from another school, and then it was me. It's the only one who was not out of one of those. So they knew each other already, but I didn't know anyone. So, and as we talked in another episode before about negative beliefs, yeah, I was definitely not the prettiest and the coolest at these times, and I think I developed shyness there more again. In primary school, it was more fun because you know it was more accepted, but there it was I was shyer to and didn't know really how to get new friends or connect with people. And also I was definitely not what you would see as a cool person. I was more, kids how they are, they do dumb things and pretend they're cool, but I was always more on the side of the teachers. I think so. That's nothing that was very appreciated by the others, of course. And I can't remember if the bullying started already in the first. I think so, probably. I mean, at some stage, of course, I also got a friends group. We were not the coolest, but not uncoolest. And I would say, it was in junior high still. The emo phase came up. So this was very popular at this time, at least in my school, at least in my grade in the class. So just to explain it shortly, it comes from emo music, what means emotional music. So it's very dramatical and
it's based more on negative emotions and not very much on happiness, which is also an emotion. Or anger,
true.
which is also an emotion. But
No.
that to me always seemed like it's more understood as sadness is the only emotion. That's why it's emotional music, which
absolutely
is not really true, but yes, it was a phase.
In this phase or for this cult, it was definitely. So it was cool. It was popular to be depressed. That sounds awful, especially if you explain it to someone. But it was at this time, kind of. So and like this heartbreaking feeling, and this everything is so bad, and no one understands me exactly, and I'm sorry if I dramatize that now, but compared, especially for myself, I was not depressed or something at this point. But as I was preparing for this episode a little bit, maybe I was in kind of an artificial depression, a low mood, because all this was kind of artificially created, more or less. And I know exactly this phase when the eyeliner, the dark black eyeliner, and the hair was somewhere like here, also completely black.
And usually with like a hair straightener, I remember like that, like hair was always straightened with a hair straightener.
Yeah,
it was black, or if it was not black, it had like, I don't know, blue or pink, like
ooh, that's next level.
Blue or pink streaks, I guess.
Maybe some
Like
skinny
parts of the
jeans
hair.
and the belts. What is it? Skip belts with the little thorns, kind of. So yeah, it's definitely a special style. I haven't had black hair. That's not. But like
You already have dark hair, so it's kind of.
at this time I was blonde.
What?
Yeah, more like you. Not that, not that light, but yeah, more like you.
All right.
But yeah, I had definitely the hair is like that, and the eyeliner, and the mood, and all of that. So, and this was the phase where I came into a new group as well, as over some connection from school, and they knew another person I got really good friend with at the time, and I don't know if she was, but for me she was kind of the leader, or more or less, of one of those emo groups, always very popular in this scene. And yeah, so I was luckily introduced into that and was sometimes part of the group, and the adventures what was mostly, I don't know, sitting in the park and smoking. For them, never for me. I literally, I can remember that was the closest I got to a cigarette at this stage, because I had to hold it for the other people when they went to the toilet or something. I never wanted to try it. But yeah, being at the shopping street in Vienna, at McDonald's, and at the park. So these were the most common things, and it was so cool. And I felt so cool at some stage that I was part of them, but at the same time, I felt absolutely not part of them because I was just kind of there. So this was, yeah, it felt very ambiguous, and I craved to have some connection or be part of it, but yeah, I also felt lonely as it wasn't really the case. I got two friends out of that were not that deep into that scene, but closer. Also, they lived closer to me. That I still have, probably not that intense, but still friends of mine. Yeah, so there was also this big hole in my heart somehow that I felt. Plus the music with Fall Out Boy and Simple Plan, for example. Simple Plan was the big band at this area for me, and all these dramatic songs and lyrics, actually, like I think you described it the last year pretty good, sitting at the window looking outside very dramatically.
Yep.
And that, yeah, listening to this music, crying, yeah, exactly that. And you feel so misunderstood, like, no, you can't understand my pain. Yeah. Plus, also interesting, somehow this American teenage movie somehow also created kind of a desire in me. Oh, I would like to, like this a this college thing that was always very. It was so cool to me. I wanted to be at college and part of these groups and those things. And somehow I was waiting for my Cinderella story.
Okay.
As there is always, one nerd or someone that is an outsider, and then the cool kid in high school I become friend with or fall in love with, and that's the happy ending. Something like this.
Well, you were the target group.
Yeah, for sure. You made your money out of mine. Yeah, and I would say, so school, blah blah. I also kind of separated and withdrawed myself when I had my first boyfriend, what was over the internet, because he was in Germany and I was in Austria. And this is definitely my fault, because yeah, I really withdrawed also in school and from nearly everything. It was just at home, just at a computer. And I was really bitchy, especially in this year, I would say. So, as
How old were you then?
this was the first year of senior high. So what is this, 14?
14?
I think
Okay.
13, 14, something like this. So actually the classes were newly mixed. So I had a few people of my old class, but a lot of new people as well. And this would have been the chance to, to create a new me, kind of. So delete the old and create a new me. Yeah, I failed a bit. um, and of course, this was also the next 3 years could have been different for sure. But anyway, it is what it is. Self acceptance. And So this was also something that separated me from the group, where I also had this loneliness feeling, actually.
Mhm.
And I would say after school, there was a huge gap where I was not making new friends. And I still had one from junior high that I'm still friends with, really my longest one, and the ones of the ex-Immo group. But still, there was probably a lack of especially deeper connections.
Mhm.
As I had this more with the long-term friend at this stage, but never this group experience I was very craving. And it was not that bad when I was in relationships, as you kind of automatically have someone you connect deeper with,
Mhm.
and someone at your side, so you can sometimes forget about that even.
Mhm.
But especially in my single periods, I felt it a lot, and yeah, I created a lot of envy, probably.
What do you mean you created a lot of envy? You felt envy.
Yeah, I felt envy, is especially when I saw it from people I knew, or like the looser friend groups, and they were together or having a holiday together,
Mhm.
for example, um, a summer day at the lake or something. And I wanted desperately to be part of that
Mhm.
somehow, but it's like everywhere in life. The more you chase something, A, it makes you yourself very unattractive, and B, it's harder to get somehow, as that's the wrong side to go for.
I think it's also not necessarily, well, I'm not sure if it's just the chasing itself, but I think it's also how you feel while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Because most people who desperately want something are in this whiny,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
no one wants to kind of like hang out with whiny, desperate people because of how they feel and also how their emotions are displayed. It's like, be with me. And then, not to talk down to anyone, we all been there.
Yeah.
but, and, I think, like, if at the time you would have been in this like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea, and then be like happy and relaxed, they would have probably been like, oh, a happy and relaxed person, yes, we want that in our
Yeah.
group. And so in a way, I think a lot of the times, because we are so desperate, we get into this emotional state where it's like where other people have a hard time to be around, because they're
Yeah.
like, this is exhausting and draining. And it's also, I think, because if you're on the other side, and I've been on both sides, you also notice it and you see it, and you kind of like, come on, love yourself some more, like, see your value. How can you not see it? Like, especially what I've seen a lot, I had really, really beautiful friends. Like, they were stunning and they would not see it. And at some point it would get annoying because they were like whining the whole time, and you're like, don't you have eyes in your head? How can you not see how beautiful you are? Like, can you stop whining? It's like, are you blind? And then and it's the same thing with people who are funny, or like who display other great characteristics, like characteristics that they can't see, or who are really kind, and then they talk down to themselves, and this down talking that they're not even
True.
conscious of is also this, like, in the beginning you might have empathy for it, but at some point you're like,
It's
come on.
draining at some
Yeah,
stage.
so I feel like that
Yeah.
also always played into those group dynamics, and also the fact that, well, they're teenagers, so no one is aware of anything.
That's true.
or they are, but in not the most positive way. They're not aware. Like, I remember, especially like in my teenage years, when I like started to read all those self-help books, I would just see all, or like mostly, the bad parts, and I would literally only focus on the good parts when I did my affirmations and stuff. And but otherwise, I thought like, okay, everything is wrong, and I just have to build myself from the ground up. That's kind of like what I thought, and I did not really see the good parts as much too. So it was not really balanced for a while, and yeah, or it would be, yeah, no, it was not really balanced. Sometimes it would just, due to the insecurities, go from I'm worth nothing and everything is wrong to I'm the best and I'm the greatest, which both is not true.
Extreme.
And yeah, both is extreme, and and yeah, one is like, they're both pretty much obvious insecurities.
Yeah,
That's a
true.
learning process, and yeah.
And it comes back to your favorite topic, self-love.
Oh yes, it does. All comes back to that at some point.
We should do an advertising. Self-love, self-love, self-love.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, people misunderstand self-love a lot of the times, and they think self-love is what insecure people display as this grandiosity, where they're better than anyone and they're superior. And that's not what it is.
Nah.
Like, yeah, I mean, you have some understanding of self-love, but a lot of people don't, and they think that like loving yourself is thinking you're better than everyone, and
Ego.
yes, exactly, it's ego, but it's not. Which is also why we will at some point make an episode on that to explain it a little bit more. But back to loneliness.
But it's a very important part. Is I would condense it down to, if you have deep connections in your life and you have the self-love, that is very, very unlikely that you even can feel lonely.
I agree.
As when I started my diploma program at uni, I got trainee friends.
Trainee friends?
Three new
friends.
Yeah, thank you. 3 new friends there. And the cool thing here was that we had marketing as a topic that connected us, you know. So it was kind of boring for our mates when we met together, as we were nearly talking the whole time about our jobs in marketing. But it was definitely something that connected us. I mean, nowadays we are probably not talking only about it anymore, but still, and this was a huge difference for me, because yeah, there was an interest from us all that we could connect to. Yeah, so this made a huge difference for me. And a bit later, for example, also a workmate that I became very close with, as she's, for example, very reflective, and I could bounce on that with her a lot, you know, and we've kind of analyzed stuffs and reflected things, and yeah, that was also something that created some depth. And then I experienced, for example, during my travels here, that I was actually able to connect to a bunch of people. Definitely not all, so it was still selective, I would say, but nearly everywhere I went, after a while, I've met 1 or 2 people where I got into deeper conversations, and that was actually always the way of creating this connection.
Mhm.
Deep talks, long talks, where you open up to each other, where I think you described it also one day pretty well. You are vulnerable, you share your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, you get to know each other,
Yeah.
where this is probably more interesting than the weather, or I don't know, the complaints about work. you always you
Yeah.
always exchange, and this makes especially when you feel heard by another person, when you
Heard.
listen to heard,
Good.
to when you listen to others, and when there are things, interests, or experiences that probably overlap, where you
Mhm.
say, I can relate to that. You understand?
Yeah.
When they are completely different, then okay, you had a good chat, but you probably, don't stay in contact. But if there is something that overlaps, um, you it's more likely that you're gonna stay in contact.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and for example, something when I was with my ex-boyfriend, I've finally experienced this friend group thing, however you want to call it, is he had a very large friend group, and it was something I was craving for since a very long time in my life. And there I finally got it, kind of, and I was part of that. We were at many parties and weddings, and yeah, a lot of social interaction, and I really enjoyed it a lot, especially in the beginning.
Mhm.
And after a while, I also realized that all beautiful people, and I hope this is not getting
Misunderstood.
misunderstood, um, all beautiful people, but there were, beside two, there was one girl and a guy I was talking more with and more intense, but mostly, and with most of them, the conversation were more on the surface, or about, in the group, about topics I would not be that much interested, geopolitics and those kind of stuff,
Okay.
for example, where that's not my main interest. And so after a while I realized it's nice, but actually it doesn't fulfill me, where I rather have less connections but deep, and that give me, yeah, or take away the feeling of loneliness. And
Okay.
for example, um, it actually, I think the first time I've recognized it really a lot was when I was already here in Australia and I broke up with my boyfriend, and I was completely alone, and I was suffering for weeks, felt awful. But I think I've talked to one of my close friends nearly every day, and that showed me, even when they are on the other side of the world,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, but I have them, and this was such a huge thing for me, and it kind of course, I had them before and I was aware of them before, but this kind of, yeah, um, underlined it for me. Um, and I would say, since I have this deep connections, I really have absolutely no problem to be alone. It's the opposite. I love to be alone.
But to be fair, as we talked about in private, but as you know, loneliness and being alone are not the same thing.
And that's what I want to point out. is, since I am not lonely anymore, I'm absolutely okay with being alone.
Okay.
Does this make more sense to you?
Yes, but it's because of a feeling that you're currently not experiencing because it's not triggered in any way or form.
Yeah.
Because you do have connections.
Yeah. That's true.
Because I find, especially when you have good connections and then when they all fall away, then you experience loneliness usually again. But what I found is that if you truly, with self-love, connect with yourself, you realize that there's also no loneliness. Because when you're connected completely with yourself, you enjoy being alone and you enjoy your own company. And even if you have no other connections at that time, you do not experience the loneliness feeling like you have before. So for me, loneliness a lot of time is literally disconnection, no matter if it's disconnection from other people, but most of the time it's disconnection from self. Because even if there is other people, it's, in my opinion, it's always disconnection from self. Because once you become aware again that you have yourself, which is a little bit hard to explain, but you kind of don't feel lonely.
What absolutely makes sense, and that's why I pointed out earlier, is that it comes down to the relations and relations and self-love, right? Is because when you have doubts about yourself and you're you're not that good friend with yourself, then you won't be enough for yourself, and you crave for
Other people.
to kind of fill the lack, and that's probably something that needs a lot of development. I mean, some people have it from the beginning, some people pretend to have, some people fake it, some people are not even consciously aware that it is more or less just fake, a facade, for example. A lot of people, put on a facade, but you're absolutely right. The more you're fine with yourself, more say, I'm enough for myself and I even don't need someone around.
I feel also when you catch yourself experiencing loneliness and then you um, connect to yourself by appreciating yourself, or appreciating yourself, being grateful, and kind of just loving yourself, and maybe even telling that to yourself in your head, and also telling nice things to yourself in your head. When you do that, there is the loneliness usually just leaves anyway, because it can't be both there at the same time, and you perceive it then.
Yeah. And I've seen it in my personal development where, for example, when you were talking about sharing experiences during travels or wherever you are, I can remember that I've done, when was it? I think 2019. I've done a group trip where I went there by myself, but was with a group of strangers, for example, in Costa Rica, and I deeply wanted to connect also to the group and be part of that, and also with the experiences there. I wanted to experience this with others as a group, where, for example, this time, I remember, and this is probably why Byron Bay still is that magical in my head, is we were also at the group trip, but I was surrounded with, I don't know, in the beginning it was 20 people as we were watching the sunrise at the lighthouse, and we were dropped there in the dark and were waiting for the sun to rise. And I think in the end there were 100 people around me and I didn't even recognize. I was standing there watching the water so intensely, and I had my earplugs in, and I was really kind of melted within myself. And something I recognized was earlier I would have liked to share this moment with, probably especially with a partner, as it's a beautiful one, and like to be together and watch this together and feel these feelings together. Where in this moment I was so absolutely fine with myself.
Yeah.
And I was completely in my thoughts, and I was like, no, I don't want anyone around me in the moment. And I really blended all the others out, and I was completely satisfied with the situation, how it was by myself. And then I had a beautiful walk after this, also by myself, and it was one of the most beautiful times I've had in this whole period. And this also kind of gave myself a proof about my personal growth and the change of myself over the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. As well as because since I'm here in Australia and New Zealand, I've did so many different kinds of traveling, however you want to call it. I did some woofing. I was by myself in some hostels. I was with a friend. And I also did a group tour for 5 weeks along the East Coast here. And again, all beautiful people. I don't want to say anything against them. But during these 5 weeks, I felt probably the most lonely in the whole year.
During the group travel.
Yeah. Because they were very different minded than myself. I couldn't get many deep talks. Probably also my own fault, as I could try to
Initiate one.
Try a bit harder for that. But
hey, would you like to talk about your traumas?
I definitely emotions. I haven't had you at this time, so I don't know how to start that.
Would you like to talk about God and philosophies? Would you like to talk about psychology and your mental illnesses?
Come on, tell me all your childhood traumas. Go!
Tell me everything that's hidden. I want to see all of it.
Do you start conversations like that?
No, I don't.
Would be interesting.
I think like most of the time I don't even start the conversations. I'm just there and I attract people.
like with the pool, with the pool bar.
Yeah, I just attract people most of the time. If I'm in a good mood, they just come to me, like no matter where I am. Like even in in our backyard, I've been sitting in the sun by myself, enjoying life, and then some random person will show up because they either lost
Do you
their
have some
way.
weed? Yesterday.
Or stuff like that. But they will just randomly show up and then start conversations. And then due to my questions, I ask questions sometimes. I think if I want to start a conversation, I think I ask questions. But to be fair, I can't even remember how we first got into contact and
the very first contact I remember.
Yeah, I don't. So who approached who and who said something first?
I was ironing at the hostel, and you were passing. I've seen you before, especially in your very bright green dress. And I was like, oh wow, this dress is amazing. But I didn't spoke it out so far, and you passed and you asked me, oh, where do you have this iron from?
Yeah.
That was the very first touch point. After this, I actually also, it's blurry.
No, I think like after I asked this, you said something about the dress, and then the whole started.
Yeah, but I don't think that we kept chatting in this moment. It was later in the backyard, maybe. But
Yeah, I think I might have. I have no idea if I did or not, but like in my head, I believe I've approached you because I've realized that you had an accent, and then I was kind of like trying to figure out where, and then I
Probably.
think that's yeah how we
German
started
speaking
chatting.
people meet.
Yeah, I think that's how it started. But as I said, most of it is forgotten. It's just like you were there and we were friends.
And I'm also very happy for that. I'm very glad for that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
How did it started? No one knows. Who cares? It's like it is.
With an iron and a green dress. That's how it started, actually.
To be
Everything
fair, I
else.
remember like now that you said it, I remember that I did like have been searching for an iron for a while because I had some dresses that yeah needed some ironing.
What a surprise.
Yeah, and I was like, ah, good.
Yeah. Where were we?
Australia, New Zealand, your travels,
Group.
you
Yeah, group. For
group tours.
example, one example I wanted to give here was here in Brisbane there is the Fallon's Brewery, and you have a beautiful sunspot. Actually, there was some big steps and bean bags and a nice area to chill, and it looks just beautiful there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've discovered that coincidentally, and I just wanted to, I think, yeah, chill there a bit, and then I spent the whole afternoon there and the whole evening, and I came back the next day, and I was literally trying to find some people that come with me there, to enjoy the evening, have a meal there, have maybe a drink there, and enjoy the setting. But yeah, I remember this quite well, as no one reacted, and uh, as their preference, what is completely fine, was to eat at the hostel in the middle of the city center, um, and focus more on, let's say, the quantity of alcohol.
There's people who focus on the quantity, and then there's people who actually just don't have the money to go to Fallon's, especially in
Both,
hostels.
probably.
Because you had financing and
I
jobs,
know.
remote jobs
I
at the
know.
time, and also Fallon's, and the way you like to spend money there is not cheap, and hostel people spend less on staying there than you spend on whining and dining.
That is true, and that's, I prefer to, you know, and it doesn't have to be every day, but I prefer to spend my money more for a nice setting, a nice evening, instead of being, especially, yeah, in this period of time, instead of sitting in the depressed hostel room.
Believe me,
And
I think a lot of people in there would also rather spend some nice money on nice things. I think that they just don't have it.
babe.
And I think like even the guys who like buy a lot of cheap alcohol and then get drunk at a hostel would much rather buy a lot of expensive alcohol and get drunk in pubs with nice settings and nice looking girls. The only difference is, can you afford it?
Maybe.
um,
It's just that with the same amount of money, you can either buy a box of wine with a liter, or maybe one or two glasses somewhere, and I just prefer the one or two glasses instead of the box.
I think the box is cheaper than even one glass. I think they're like really cheap.
Really?
I have never bought one, but I think they're really cheap.
I don't want to know it.
Yeah, that's okay. You
I
don't
don't
have
want to
to.
know
It's
it.
okay.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, and at this stage, for example, it was compared to the other group tour I did completely fine with me. I I'm okay. How to say? Somehow I felt lonely, but somehow it was also fine with me. As I said, yeah, okay, it's a short period, but also I know that I enjoyed the time also by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've set some of my boundaries before and what I enjoy or prefer and what I stand up for, kind of things. And also I knew that it was just a period over a longer time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, it was just interesting for me to reflect and compare the situations from a few years ago to now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So how would you, like, what, like, from all that you've told me now
Yeah.
and your intention on talking about loneliness, how would you, like, what would you give our readers, sorry, our
Who
listeners,
wants to read the transcript on Spotify? You're welcome to.
so what would you give our listeners, what kind of message would you share with our listeners?
Connection and self-love.
Connection and self-love, is that how you would summarize, like, all of it? Or kind of like your realizations through your travel and through your experiences?
These are the most important points,
Mm-hmm.
I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And that it also probably takes a bit to be able to see the difference between loneliness and being alone, and also be okay with being alone. Is I think in the gratitude episode, I've talked about the experience in New Zealand where I was on this 500-acre farmland by myself with nothing around and with two dogs actually and a lot of cows. So you could see it as lonely, but I was just alone, and I felt so much gratitude in me, and it was so great, this feeling that I had there. It
Mm-hmm.
was so far away from feeling lonely, and that is something I really want to point out, that loneliness and being alone is absolutely not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, to be aware of that and ask yourself, if you really feel lonely, what is it? And very big clues would be relations, deep relations, and self-love,
Mm-hmm.
actually. And yeah, if this is something that affects you negatively, I would say, then it would be probably a sector in your life where you see, okay, maybe I should make some changes there and yeah, interact there a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from what I've heard, from what you said, what I've also noticed is gratitude, which we already have an episode on, but like literally gratitude, because you can't feel grateful for what you have and lonely at the same time. And every time, from your story, every time you have been alone but you were not lonely, you talked about how grateful you were for the
Yeah.
things that were there. And I feel like as soon, like when you're alone, and lonely, and as soon as you shift your focus from this loneliness feeling to the gratitude of what you actually have, either with you right now as in nature, uh, like whatever surrounds you, like nature is usually a great thing to focus on because it's beautiful, but um, it might just be that your body is working, or it might just be the home that you're surrounded by. It definitely helps to go out to parks or places where there is nature to observe, because it makes it a lot easier to be grateful for. But whenever you shift the focus from like this I feel alone feeling to literally just what you already have, and start appreciating and being grateful for those things, you don't feel alone no longer, and you start to feel really good as well. And then
Yeah.
you enjoy being alone. The same thing as if you shift from the focus on loneliness, which is kind of lack. because you perceive yourself as lacking of company, lacking of connection, and so on and so forth. That's kind of like what it is. And if you just shift to a focus even on yourself, and you tell yourself, I'm grateful for myself, and I'm like, I love myself, and I enjoy my own company, and I laugh about my own jokes, um, and like watch a nice movie with yourself, and do things with and for yourself.
Pamper yourself.
Yes, or even just have conversations with yourself inside of your mind, and being grateful
If it's
for that.
outside, then maybe in private it can, be attract interesting people. Otherwise, maybe or the police or
Or do maybe someone will join you, who knows.
yeah. Can I join the conversation? True, actually.
Don't be limited by the fear of social norms.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a shift in focus can help tremendously.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right with the gratitude. That's I forgot to speak it out, but that's exactly what it is and what I've experienced much more.
Another one for all of you who believe in God or the universe or spirit guides or angels or your higher self or your inner child or anything, well, spiritual in some form or way. You're never alone, because you always have any of that. So as a person of faith, no matter what that faith may be, you can always focus back on that easily and be like, well, I might be alone, but I'm never lonely, due to, well, if you're believing God, being part of God and having God, and everything that goes along with it. And if you believe in other things like spirit guides, well, you probably have a whole group up, up wherever they are. And if you if you believe in angels, same thing. And depending on what you believe in, if you believe in different gods, you might have like a lot of gods. So you never actually lonely, because they're always there. So if you can focus on that, that can help a lot as well. And for those of you who are atheists, who don't believe in anything or believe in science, um, yeah, focus on gratitude. Focus on gratitude and focus on self-love.
Yeah, I've seen it with religious people. They all told me more or less that there is someone that accomplished them, and fate.
Yeah.
Fate was a big word that came along.
All right.
Okay. Do you want to add anything more, or are we good?
To the topic. Well, while we're on it, if you enjoy this episode, rate us 5 stars. We would be very happy and grateful for you rating us 5 stars.
Sorry,
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube.
Okay, for all the people that are just listening to us, please watch the video now, then you can see why we are laughing.
There's dogs walking around us because we're outside, which is probably all, which you might have noticed, and yeah, they're right in front of us and demand attention.
Okay, so yeah, you've summarized that the people should follow us, right? And like us and rate us 5 stars on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube,
and if you want
Patreon,
extra content, you can find us on Patreon, where you will get papers and handouts to most of our episodes, if not all. You will find all the episodes, but a lot of extra ones as well. And You can also become part of our Bliss Building community and have chats with us and group discussions. So if you're interested in that, check out Patreon.
One last thing that just came to my mind is that we're probably gonna publish the gratitude episode after this one, so they can't watch the gratitude episode maybe when they hear this one. So just stay tuned, as there's gonna be a gratitude episode.
And I will be there the following week.
Exactly. All right. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Leave us comments if you want to share something with us or if you have any questions. And otherwise, we're gonna see you soon.
Thanks for listening.